Hi there. This screencast will tell you about the Middle English pronunciation exercise, which, as you are in an online class, you aren't doing this in class. And in a lot of ways, online classes don't involve the same kind of reading aloud that a face-to-face class might involve. However, in the study of literature, and in particular in the study of poetry, there is something very important about hearing the sound of that poetry. As we read the Canterbury Tales, this is the first time that we are reading something in its original language. So Beowulf was in translation, Beast Claveret in translation, even Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, another Middle English text, we also read in translation because that particular dialect of Middle English is quite difficult for a modern English speaker. However, the Middle English of the Canterbury Tales is much more approachable for a modern English speaker and becomes much easier to understand when you hear it. So, in order to facilitate you being able to read at least some of your Middle English aloud, and in order for you to be able to learn about some of the sounds of poetry in terms of understanding the figures of speech, but also being able to appreciate the way that Chaucer uses form in order to communicate with his audience. And by form, I mean choices like rhyme and that sort of thing. We are going to do some practice with speaking the Middle English aloud and looking for these poetic terms, which we will talk about shortly. So I know that this might be a little bit uncomfortable, but at least you're not sitting in the middle of a classroom with me asking you to do this in front of a class full of people. So it's the little things, right? So first of all, you will want to download this worksheet, which will be a part of the assignment on Canvas, and save it in a place where you can find it, and you'll want to put your name up here. Next, I encourage you to hop over to Canvas, where there is under modules. So if you haven't explored this area yet, it's worth looking at. So some of the questions I post on Yellow Digger from here. But regardless, there's a lot of information about each text over here. So under modules, scroll down to the Canterbury Tales and click on the Alliteration, Assonance, and Consonants tab. Here I give you definitions of these three figures, or actually 4 figures of speech that involve sound. I did include the definition of rhyme, even though most people are pretty familiar with the concept of rhyme. And then I'm giving you a little example here. So if we understand that alliteration is the repetition of the same initial sounds and words in a line of poetry, that's like the she sells seashells. So that repetition of the S at the beginning of all those words. We saw that a lot in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight if you glance over at the Middle English. We also have something called consonants, which just like it sounds like is a repetition of consonant sounds. And those are usually at the end of a word. Basically, it's when rhyme occurs, but the vowels are different. And then assonance is sort of the flip side of that, when rhyme occurs, but the consonants are different. And so you don't have true rhyme. So neither consonants nor assonance offers true rhyme, but rather approximate rhyme. And it's certainly noticeable. You've probably noticed both of those just in everyday life. And then rhyme is the repetition of identical or similar sounds, usually in pairs and generally at the end of a line of poetry. All of the Canterbury Tales are written in rhyming couplets, which means that there are 2 lines that rhyme with each other, followed by another 2 lines that rhyme with each other, and so on. And I have one of those couplets right here. This is from the general prologue. And I don't have the Babel page number right here. I apologize, but it's from the general prologue section of the reading that you did for the Canterbury Tales, except for you did not read these particular lines, which are about the monk. Now, a monk is a member of the church whose job it is to sort of hang out in the monastery and pray and study the Bible. This particular monk, though, loves to go hunting. And so in his little portrait in the prologue, we learn a little bit about what this monk looks like when he rides around. And I'm going to read aloud now these 2 lines, this couplet. And I want you to see if you can notice any of these sound-based figures of speech in this couplet. Here we go. And Juan he rode, man mikt his bridle hair, jingling in a whistling wind as clear. Now the line continues on. This is a comparison, as clear as, whatever follows. But the first thing you'll want to do as you try to understand how sound might be working in your lines is actually understand what the line says. And this is just like step one in the close reading assignment. So a sort of translation of what's going on. And when he rode, men might his bridle hear. Okay, well in modern English we would say that more like men might hear his bridle jingling in a whistling wind as clear as whatever. So actually, you might be surprised by how similar Middle English is to modern English when we look at that. So now we have an understanding. There's this monk, he's riding around, he's got a jingling bridle, and if we can already start to learn something about the monk here, which is that his actions contradict what they should be. So he's supposed to be hanging out in the monastery and studying and working there, but instead he's riding around on his horse, like with his bridle jingling in the wind. So already we have a sense this monk is maybe not who he's supposed to be. But how can the sound help us learn a little bit more about that? Well, listen one more time and see if you can spot the assonance in this line, which is the repetition of those vowel sounds that maybe aren't a part of true rhyme, so same vowel sounds but different consonant sounds. So here we go. And Juan he rode, mal mikt his bridle hair, jingling in a whistling wind as clear. Now, I emphasized it pretty hard there, especially in the second line, but that repetition of that I sound, which is pronounced E, jingling in, a whistling wind, all of that, it creates that tinkling kind of jingling sound. So we have a little bit of the content of the line being mirrored in the form of the line, where the form helps us understand more what it sounds like when this monk rides around. And it actually also brings up another problem. If this monk loves to hunt, as he says, why is he riding around jingling? He's not going to be able to hunt very well if he's that loud, that jingly. So it again points to this idea that the monk is maybe not who he says he is. Like if he does like to hunt, maybe he's not very good at it, or maybe he just likes to pretend to hunt. So this is just one example of the way in which the form of the poetry that we're looking at, and in particular the sound of the poetry, can help us understand more about the content of those lines that we're looking at. And that's your goal in this pronunciation exercise. So yes, you will fill out this little chart of Middle English pronunciation, but you're also going to be thinking about, what am I noticing about the sound, and how can that thing that I notice about the sound help me understand something about the content? So that's what we're going to work on now, is getting you to be able to understand what you're hearing. So in Middle English, all of the vowels are sort of like Romantic language vowels, so like French, Spanish, and Italian. So instead of A, E, I, O, U, it's more like A, E, O, U. But I'm also going to give you examples of all these types of vowels. So these are sort of what the names of the vowels are. These are the Middle English words that contain those vowels. And then you are going to write in the Modern English words that I'm going to tell you. So in class, I would pronounce the Middle English words and ask you to come up with the English words. But because we're not face-to-face, I think it would be more efficient for me to give you some examples of Modern English. You write them down so you at least have that kinetic experience. And I strongly encourage you to pronounce these Modern English words as I give them to you. Okay, so Middle English, nam, cos. Modern English, calm, palm. Middle English, con, thought. Modern English, con, as in to con someone out of money or something, or swan. Gren, sueta, suede. It gives us that nice long E sound, suede. Techa, heath. Modern English, make, lay. So again, another long E, but this time with an open mouth. If you pay attention to what your mouth is doing when you're pronouncing these, the long and short syllables, you'll see what it means by closed and open. So this long E closed, grena, sweet. You'll notice your mouth almost goes into a smile position, and that's something to keep in mind as you're analyzing the poetry is, is it making your face do something different? Whereas with this long E, the open one, that one, your jaw will drop some. Make, lay. Okay, down to our short E. Tendra, tendra. This is a very hard one because this particular short E has a very different regional pronunciation depending on where you grew up in the United States or elsewhere for that matter. And so there are two words that really can help us create that short E sound in modern English, and they are sex and bet. So both of those you'll see really cause you to clip that short E. This particular pronunciation, I'm looking at the final E there. This is something that is pronounced in Middle English, but it's just a gentle kind of sound at the end of a word. And so I don't have a modern English version of that because we don't pronounce that type of E in modern English. So this is son, and you might just write a little there, write some kind of note to yourself about how that's pronounced. All right, moving on to the I's, we have sheeras, riden. Modern English, shears, as in to cut something, or cheese. Short I, this thing. So bliss is a good modern English word for that, as is our word this. So you're going to find some Middle English words are the exact same as modern English, and it can be a little confusing. All right, and now on our long O's. Boat, gold. Modern English, boat, as in to ride a boat on the water, or goat, as in the animal. Middle English, hale, gone. This is our long O. You'll notice your jaw drops when you say that. Modern English, holly, like the plant. Short O, oft, folk. This is a hard one. Sometimes I describe this as like saying pot with a British voice, like pot. But really an easier way to do it is think of the modern English word caught. Like, oh, I caught a fish. But try not to overpronounce that GU sound. So caught. So you've still got that roundedness to it. Okay, onto our long U sound. So notice these are mostly O words, but it's pronounced like a long U. So we have flora, fulas, and drukta. That is going to correspond with modern English words. Fool or flu, like the flu season is coming. And then we have short U. But, put, I'm sorry, but, jung, but our examples are boot, like, or foot, actually, I think is a really good one for that. Foot and put. And then our final consonantal U, and what that means is like, you know how Y can sometimes be a consonant? Same situation with the consonantal U. So Y, if it's a consonant, that's how it sounds in like yes. Well, in Middle English, you can do that as well. And so we have vertu, sure, salut, and mu. And you can kind of hear that y sound as I'm pronouncing those. So modern English words that can help you make that sound are chew and virtue and skew. So all of those will help you make that sound. So I'm going to wrap that up for now, and the rest of the instructions will be in the assignment itself. So thank you for listening.